So today, we're going to dive into one of the most incredible stories of survival from modern history. We're talking about the rebirth of the Albanian Evangelical Church, a community that literally, and I mean literally, rose from the ashes.
Okay, I want to start with just one number, 16. What do you think that means? A date? A chapter? Just keep that number, 16, in the back of your mind, because it's the key to this entire unbelievable story.
You know, the best way to wrap your head around this is to think about the phoenix, that mythical bird that burns to death and is reborn from its own ashes. Because honestly, that's pretty much exactly what happened here.
Now, what's so fascinating is that unlike a lot of Protestant movements you might read about, this one wasn't some foreign import. No, its roots are deeply, uniquely Albanian, tied right into the birth of the nation itself. See, this all kicks off during a period called the Rilinja Kombëtare, or the National Awakening. Albania was under Ottoman rule, and the empire was actively trying to suppress the Albanian language and culture. So any group that was championing Albanian language education, they became a really important ally in the fight for national survival.
And you know what's incredible? We can trace this whole thing back to just one family, the Kyrios siblings. Gerasim was the reformer, sure, but his sister Savasti was an absolute revolutionary. She started the very first school for girls that taught in the Albanian language. Think about that. She was defying the Ottoman government, cultural taboos, religious leaders, you name it. For them, their faith and their patriotism were the exact same thing.
So the work of people like the Kyrios family set the stage for an actual, organized community. Their first formal group, the Evangelical Brotherhood, got started in the 1890s. Now get this. That's almost 2 decades before Albania even became its own country. And that timing is everything, right? It just goes to show this was a homegrown Albanian movement from the very beginning. But this really hopeful nationalist start, it was about to be completely, and I mean systematically, wiped out. We're going from the spark straight into the ashes. This had never happened before in history. In 1967, the communist dictator Enver Hoxha didn't just push religion aside, he outlawed it completely. He wrote atheism directly into the nation's constitution, making Albania the world's first and only official atheist state.
And the effect? It was instant. It was brutal. We're talking over 2,000 churches and mosques just gone, bulldozed, or maybe even weirder, turned into something else entirely. Imagine your local cathedral suddenly becoming a basketball court, or a historic mosque being turned into a movie theater. The physical signs of religion were just erased from the landscape.
And this wasn't just about buildings. This was a reign of pure terror. Priests, imams, pastors, they were executed or sent to forced labor camps. The secret police, the Siguramini, created this culture of total surveillance, so bad that kids were literally taught to spy on their own parents. Think about that. A single prayer whispered in your own home could be a death sentence.
So, remember that number I gave you at the start, 16? Well, after 45 years of this brutal, systematic campaign to erase faith, when freedom finally came back in 1991, this is how many evangelical believers they could find. In the entire country, 16. Not 16,000, 16 people. The community was, for all intents and purposes, extinct.
But from that absolute ruin, something just wild happened. The next part of this story isn't just about rebuilding, it's an explosion, a kind of growth that absolutely nobody could have seen coming.
I mean, just look at these numbers. It's staggering. You go from about 16 believers in 91 to 3,000 in just 7 years. And today, the estimate is around 15,000. That's a growth rate that it doesn't even seem possible. From the absolute brink of extinction to a recognized national faith community in a single generation.
So how on earth did that happen? Well, it was kind of a perfect storm, right? Communism collapses, and it leaves this huge ideological vacuum. A whole generation raised to be atheists was suddenly free and asking, well, what now? At that exact moment, international aid and missionary groups arrive. And here's the key. They focus their energy on university students, the very same young people who had just led the charge to overthrow the regime. And that early focus on students? It shaped the church into what it is today. It is an overwhelmingly young movement. I mean, while many religious communities in Europe are getting older, this one was basically built from the ground up by young people in their 20s and 30s, which gives it this totally unique energy.
But the story doesn't end there, of course. It's not a simple happily ever after. After surviving state-sponsored extinction and this miraculous rebirth, the Albanian Church now faces a whole new fight for its future. And in some ways, it's even more complex.
The biggest threat today isn't a dictator, it's the economy. Mass emigration, mostly to Western Europe, has just been devastating. Look at this. In just the last decade, the community has been sliced in half, from around 30,000 to 15,000. Why? Because its youngest, its most active members are leaving the country to find better opportunities.
And the second challenge is, well, it's baked into the system. The government officially recognizes 5 main faith communities. But you'll see here, 4 of them are considered traditional, and they get financial support from the state. The Evangelical Church, it's recognized, sure, but it gets a big, fat 0.
And this creates a really unfair situation. Without that state support, it's incredibly hard for this young community to do basic things, like pay its pastors, maintain its buildings, or navigate the legal nightmare of trying to get back property that was stolen from them by the communists. It's like they're fighting for their future with one hand tied behind their back.
So that brings us right here to the big question. This is a church that was born out of a fierce desire for Albanian identity, and then it was reborn thanks to global support. But now, with its own people leaving, and with no support from the state, it's facing its ultimate test. Can the Phoenix of the Balkans finally learn to fly all on its own?